For more than a week, we have tracked Hurricane George across the Atlantic and into the Gulf of Mexico. Tonight, the storm is closing in on Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and Louisiana. Hurricane-force winds are lashing the shore at this hour, and it will likely get worse before it gets better. Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Weather Center. I'm Warren Madden. For the latest on George, let's go to Mike Seidel in the Forecast Center.
And Warren, we've had numerous problems already across the Gulf Coast of Florida into Alabama and Mississippi. Flash flooding continues to be a problem. Escambia County, Santa Rosa County, those of you in the western Florida Panhandle under warnings, flash flood warnings, until at least 12:45 in the morning. And now officially in Pensacola, you've had almost 9 inches of rain today alone, most of that falling late this afternoon and this evening. We've had a couple of tornadoes touch down, possible damage near the town of Baghdad, which is just north of Pensacola. And this is just the beginning of Hurricane George's effects on the Gulf Coast because it is a slow-moving storm. Let's take a look at the latest from the Hurricane Center as of 10 Central. And the wind's now 105. That's down a hair since earlier this evening. This movement continues to slow down. That's not good. North-northwest at 6. And the pressure has come up. Hurricane Hunter aircraft, the Air Force reservists, flying out of Houston tonight, are in the storm, and they are now reporting a pressure of 964 millibars. Now, the hurricane warnings continue in effect along the Gulf Coast from Morgan City all the way to Panama City. Those earlier hurricane watches west of Morgan City have been discontinued. And still a tropical storm warning and hurricane watch for Panama City east to St. Mark's. And Weather Channel team coverage continues this hour. We have Kristen Dodd. She is reporting from Pensacola, Florida, and Bill Keneally from New Orleans. Kristen, we've had to move you twice over the past day or so to get you into a safe area. How is it where you are now, and how far are you from the coast?
Well, we are in a safe area. I want to establish that right now. We're just off Escambia Bay, which is much farther inland than where we have been. Earlier this evening when we were getting pelted by near hurricane force winds, we were right on Pensacola Bay at the base of the 3-mile bridge, and that even is about 3 miles off to Gulf Breeze and a little bit more beyond to the barrier islands. We were evacuated from the barrier islands this morning when the very heavy rainfall and crashing waves washed over all the roadways. All routes were cut off, and we were one of the last to get out over the bridges and back onto the mainland area. So that was one evacuation for us. And we also have evacuated just from Pensacola, closer to the downtown, to this more secluded area where we are protected from the wind because it has been quite wicked. And we have had reports of tornadoes. One tornado is reportedly to have ripped the roof off of a condominium, and we have had a lot of trees and limbs down. We've been dodging those as we have been evacuating, also having to try to drive through some driving rain. It's been just a nightmare as far as that is concerned, and no wonder that we are under flash flood warnings here. It has been a very heavy rainfall night, and it looks like that is going to be continuing. Now let's check in with Bill Keneally for the latest conditions in New Orleans.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kristen. We're not near as lucky over here. In the case of we're holding the wind, we're also running the risk of more rainfall as the next couple of days ensue. Some of the computer models printing out a ton of rain over this way. Hopefully that's not going to materialize, and if it does, it doesn't fall within the city where we're looking at some areas that are still below sea level, and that would be a real test of the pumping capacity of the actual French Quarter pumping systems. I'll show you some video shot earlier today. This is from Lake Pontchartrain, and up on the Lake Pontchartrain area we've had a lot of very stiff north winds, which at times are gusting as high as 64 miles per hour. Unofficially, that was the report from the Lakefront Airport today. That was a north wind pushing water down the lake, and then it crashes in along the Lakeshore Drive. That roadway was shut. The good news is, even though the waves were large and the water was moving along, it did not breach or top any of the levees set up around the Lake Pontchartrain area, and for that matter, all the levees protecting the city of New Orleans, the outlying subdivisions and actual suburbs are still holding very nicely. Haven't had a whole lot of rain as of yet. Officially, the airport reporting just over an inch of rain, but as I said, the computer models are ominously printing out an awful lot of rain here in eastern Louisiana, so that will be a consideration the next couple of days. So, Mike, by and large, we're in pretty good shape up till now.
So far, Bill. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Bill Keneally from the Weather Channel tonight in New Orleans. Let's join Stu Oster here at the Forecast Center, our meteorology supervisor. And Stu, let's talk a little bit more about New Orleans and what may or may not happen the next couple of days?
Well, up until this point, it's been good news for New Orleans. Unfortunately, with a landfalling hurricane, what's good news for one place is bad news for another. But at least for New Orleans, the center of circulation staying to the east, and with a lot of the heavy weather being to the east of the circulation center, they've missed the worst of the rain and the worst of the wind so far, and probably the worst of the storm surge. However, two disclaimers on that. One, we're not ready to sound the all clear until we're absolutely sure that the hurricane and most of its effects are going to stay east. And the other is that it could yet hook a little bit to the west, and we're not sure exactly where the rainfall pattern is going to be. We are glad that the whole city prepared for the worst, and we hope that next time the same thing happens, but we would also caution them not to let their guard down just yet.
It's always better to be safe than sorry. I know a lot of folks will board up and then they go, why do we do that for? But it's always better to protect your property and your life just in case the gloom and doom arrives. One thing we want to mention, though, Stu, in New Orleans tonight, all the major interstates around the Big Easy are closed. So if you're traveling along I-10 heading towards New Orleans or coming east from Alabama and Mississippi, I don't know why anybody would want to be doing that tonight. You just can't get through. So the best bet is to sit tight, avoid southeastern Louisiana, and just wait for us or for your road conditions to improve. We'll let you know as soon as we hear from the state police there. Let's get you updated now on the storm itself, and you can see the eye is making very little movement towards the coast, and this has pounded parts of the Florida Panhandle and into Alabama now with heavy rainfalls. I mentioned earlier, so far about 9 inches officially at Pensacola.
We've received the latest report from the Air Force Reserve Reconnaissance, the Hurricane Hunters, finding the center has moved about 20 miles north-northwest in the last, let's see, about 4 hours. That's about 5 miles an hour. But the steering currents in general around the hurricane are very weak, and that's why we can't be 100% sure where the center is going. We'll be tracking that overnight. But then we have all these squalls out to the east of it, and even some of these which came through Pensacola earlier with a very heavy rain and wind.
Let's take a look at some of those rain squalls on radar, Stu. And again, it's Santa Rosa, Escambia counties right here, extreme western part of the Panhandle, under the flash flood warnings. Then we move west in towards Mobile, those areas around Foley and up towards Mobile and Bay Minette, heavy rainfalls. And again, the system is not moving, so these same areas are just getting lambasted.
Yeah, it'd be tempting to say that when all is said and done with this, we'll have excessive rainfall amounts, but unfortunately, we've already seen that. The center of circulation is not even on shore, so depending on how the rainfall patterns evolve, those excessive rainfalls could turn into astronomical rainfall amounts.
Let's take a look at the rainfall total based on Doppler radar, and we looked at another Doppler radar indicating 11 to 12 inches, and this pretty much bears that out. You can see some of the darker colors up here. We're getting upwards now of 8 to 10 inches already verified at Pensacola and down towards the coast, over towards Mobile and Baldwin counties. And it's not going to certainly get any better over the next couple of days.
Yeah, and we would hope not too many people are out and about tonight, but if anybody has to go out on the road and feels they're not in jeopardy from the wind or the storm surge and thinks they can go out, if you are going over a road, you're not sure how deep the water is, please don't drive through it. We always have problems with that, and we hope people observe flash flood safety rules.
Right, the number one killer in flash flooding is folks in their cars.
Yeah. And it doesn't take much water to sweep a car away.
That's true. Stu Ostra, thanks for the update there and the analysis. We'll keep you posted overnight here at the Weather Channel with more live reports. And of course, if you're away from your TV set, check us out online at the Weather Channel online service, weather.com. Now back to the studio. Let's get the rest of the current weather and your Monday forecast.
And as we go into the forecast and the rest of the weather, we start with the current conditions. Cold front stretching from northern New England until it becomes a stationary front as it moves into the plain states. This is our focus for some active weather tonight in the form of some strong to severe thunderstorms. Anywhere in red here, Kansas over into southern Ohio and then reaching up into New England, could see some severe weather during the overnight hours and into the first part of Monday. Here's what it looks like in the northeast, a leading trough of low pressure ahead of the front. All along this, we have seen showers and thunderstorms. Here's what it looks like right now. Worst of the storms have pushed offshore here, off of Long Island, but still seeing some wet weather around the Cape, and then also coming through northern New England, still seeing some wet weather and stormy weather in Vermont and New Hampshire. Closing in on the Cape a little bit, you can see, looks like it should be offshore pretty soon, but Nantucket and down toward Chatham, still seeing some showers around. Have a tornado warning out right now. Barber County.
Central Gulf states are bracing for the wrath of Hurricane George. The storm's destructive winds and rain cover a wide swath of land. Good evening and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Paul Emick. Now, we're closely watching George. For a complete and current update, we need to get that right now. We'll turn to Mike Seidel in the Forecast Center. Mike?
And Paul, we just got in the latest advisory, the intermediate advisory from the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Let's give you the latest. We'll show you the coordinates, and then I'll make the necessary adjustments here graphically. And there it is. This is the 11 o'clock advisory. Now, as of midnight, we have just a couple of changes. The latitude and longitude have changed if you're plotting at home. Now, 29.6 north and 88.6 west. So it has jogged just a little bit to the north. And it's now about 65 miles south-southeast of Biloxi, Mississippi, and about 100 miles east-southeast of New Orleans. The winds have not changed. They're still now blowing sustained winds at 105 miles an hour. The Air Force Observers, the hurricane hunters, are in and out of the storm overnight, giving us the latest. The pressure is at 964 millibars. Let's take a look at the hurricane warnings. They remain unchanged with this advisory from Morgan City east to Panama City along the Gulf Coast. And then from there east to St. Mark's, you're under a tropical storm warning and a hurricane watch, and we don't expect any major changes in these watch and warning areas during the overnight hours. Now, with me tonight, joining us from the coast, let's give you the latest now. Let's join our storm team coverage. We have Bill Keneally in New Orleans. Now, Bill, so far this evening, you've had some wind and rain, wind gust over 50 miles an hour, but not as bad so far as have been anticipated.
That is very true, Mike. The real fear had been the amount of rain that could fall over a short order of time, and I know that the pumping system is capable of doing 1 inch per hour, and then after that first hour, a ½ inch per hour, but collectively only 8 inches per day. We have not had anywhere near that thus far. Officially, I think, about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches of rain, fairly prevalent across the French Quarter as well as over by the Moisant International Airport. So the rain aspect has been very tolerable. The wind, on the other hand, has been a little high at times, 64 mile per hour wind gust at the Lakefront Airport late this afternoon. And there have been some power outages in the area, upwards of 100,000 customers at times. That is what I've heard from Entergy, the power supplier here in Greater New Orleans. I showed some pictures earlier, Mike, from the lakefront area. We'll take you up around Lake Pontchartrain. That's the big lake. If you look at a map, there's a big round lake north of the downtown. That is Lake Pontchartrain, and that lake is probably 25 or 30 miles in diameter from north to south. And you have that long fetch, that north wind catching all the high waves and then kind of throwing them down along the south shore there. And what it did, it actually flooded out a lot of the picnic areas, Lakeshore Drive. A lot of roadways were shut near the lakefront, but thankfully it never came anywhere near the top of the levee, so there was no reports of any breaching of the levee nor any topping of the levee by any of the high water. So by and large, Mike, considering what's going on in Biloxi or what may go on in Biloxi and points east, we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, Bill Keneally from the Weather Channel. Thanks for the update there from New Orleans tonight. So far, so good in the Big Easy. Now, joining me on the phone is Dr. Bill Williams from the Coastal Weather Research Center in Mobile, Alabama. And Dr. Williams, obviously this hurricane will be making some adjustments to the beaches and the coastline. What's your take on the storm so far?
Well, so far most of the action, Mike, has been along the coast. Here in Mobile, we're about 25 miles inland. We've had gusts to about 54 miles per hour out at Mobile Airport. But down at Dauphin Island Sea Lab, they reported a gust of 82 miles per hour earlier this evening. And we also had a report at the Mississippi Power Company in Gulfport, Mississippi, where they had a gust to 93 miles per hour. And all of that occurred in a feeder band, which moved northward, and that feeder band has now moved quite a ways inland, and there have been reports of winds of 50 to 60 miles per hour in that feeder band. Also, there was a tornado, an apparent tornado that occurred in that feeder band in Baldwin County, about 20 miles east of Mobile, and it damaged a power facility, causing a widespread outage.
What about the coastal effects so far? I know you and the rest of the crew down there take a very close look at beach erosion, storm surges, and this has certainly been a season of tropical activity in your area.
It's been a tough one, and beach erosion has been a serious problem. And Right now at Gulf Shores and along Pensacola Beach, the erosion has been severe this afternoon and this evening. Considerable damage, of course, to piers and water now coming in around buildings and condominiums. But it looks like quite a bit of erosion also on the Dauphin Island, and we're getting a problem now with the continuous flow of strong southeasterly flow into the coastal areas. We're getting very high water. It's backing up rivers and backing up some of the bayous, and this is going to create a serious flooding problem here for the next 24 to 48 hours. And of course, it looks like this situation is going to continue for some time with some tremendous rainfall totals already. Quite a bit of rain, reports of up to 8 to 10 inches has occurred east of Mobile and on over into the Pensacola area.
Okay, Dr. Williams, we appreciate the update there. Obviously, the hurricane already damaging the beaches there, the Florida beaches, over towards Mobile and Biloxi. Let's turn our attention now to Stu Oster, our meteorology supervisor. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on along the Gulf Coast as George is making an attempt to get closer and closer to the coast.
Well, as Dr. Williams said, there has been severe beach erosion due to the long fetch of wind over the water and also a very persistent one over the last day or two. He also mentioned that outer squall which came through with the very gusty winds. Now Dauphin Island has had a wind gust back up to 74 miles per hour. They're now starting to get a little closer to the inner core of the hurricane.
Now, you mentioned also a couple of tornadoes touched down, and we got word from the Severe Storms Forecast Center, Storm Prediction Center, that they will likely reissue and expand the watch area, the tornado watch area, which is set to expire at 2 o'clock. So those of you in the panhandle of Florida and into southern Alabama, the northeastern quadrant of the storm, stay tuned for the possibility of additional tornadoes. Let's take a look at the satellite loop here, Stu, and you can see the eye is continuing to make that wobble ever so slowly towards the Gulf Coast.
And if it were to continue on its present track, and keep in mind there is a margin of error there, but if it were to continue, the center of circulation would be getting pretty close to somewhere in the Mississippi coast later today, perhaps even later this morning, unless it slowed down a little further. But we have all the different problems associated with that, the storm surge closer to the center, the erosion that we were talking about, the battering waves out a good distance from the circulation center, the heavy rain and flash flooding, the threat of which will continue for quite some time. And then the wind itself, as the new squall bands move on shore, could be more trees, limbs, power lines down, signs blown about, that sort of thing.
Well, we've already had reports of power outages across parts of Florida and then into the Mobile area, Baldwin County, Mobile and Baldwin counties in Alabama. Another thing is the rainfall. The fact that the storm is slowing down just prolongs the impact from Hurricane George. Radar right now, you can see the heavier rain bands wrapping in across Escambia County in Alabama, where you're now under a flash flood warning until 1. And for those of you in Santa Rosa and Escambia counties in Florida, the flash flood warning goes till 12:45, likely to continue throughout the night.
Yeah, lots of heavy rain and unfortunately quite a bit more to come.
Okay, Stu Ostro, our meteorology supervisor, with the analysis tonight here in the Forecast Center. And of course, we will keep you up to date for the next several days, as this storm will not go away, at least until the middle part of the week. Of course, if you're away from your TV set, check us out at the Weather Channel online service at weather.com. Now, with the rest of the current weather and your forecast for Monday, let's go back to the studio.
All right, thanks a lot, Mike. In the Northeast, things are getting quieter. They're getting drier, too. We're going to see a nice, pleasant change here. Big batch of high pressure, big stable dome with ascending air. That's a good night we have in Chicago and even toward Detroit. We're going to share it throughout the Northeast. New England, things will get much, much brighter. A few storms linger and even a little wet weather into parts of California. The worst of it is moving on. Our showers and storms are getting out of the way. Parts of Virginia still a bit stormy presently. May still see at least a strong rumble of thunder here. Of course, Mike and Stu talked about the problems along the Gulf Coast. Also, a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings, one into Oklahoma and Grant County, also Harper County, Kansas, for a little bit longer. It could be wetter through here. West Coast, well, we're dealing with a few showers and sprinkles. Not out of the question in San Francisco. We might see a stray sprinkle as we get into our day ourselves. All right, here's the current map. Some of the mess is going with us. Again, the front is going to move and get rid of our showers, but unfortunately, George will still be way too big of a part of our day. In the Northeast, here we go for the morning, 68.
The effects of Hurricane George are being felt in many areas of the central Gulf Coast states. There are already reports of flash flooding, heavy rainfall, and high winds. Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Weather Center. I'm Christina Abernathy. Hurricane George continues to be our top story as the eye slowly inches closer to land. Let's get a complete update from Mike Seidel in the Forecast Center.
And Christina, we're now on day 11 of covering Hurricane George, which ravaged the Caribbean. A lot of loss of life there, and now it's battering the Gulf Coast. Here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center, and as of midnight Central Time, we put the storm 100 miles east-southeast of New Orleans. That's about 60 or so miles south-southeast to Biloxi, Mississippi. Winds of 105 miles an hour. It's moving northwest at 6, so it has slowed down, and the pressure is up a few millibars over the past couple of hours. The Hurricane Hunter aircraft, the Air Force reservists, are in and around the storm, giving us the latest coordinates, the latest latitude and longitude, and checking in consistently, and we're giving that information to you via the Hurricane Center. As far as hurricane warnings go, they haven't changed at all this evening. They continue overnight tonight and into Monday. Morgan City, right on eastward through Pensacola, and as far east as Panama City, then east of there, those of you in the Florida Panhandle, from Panama City to St. Mark's under a tropical storm warning and a hurricane watch. We've got live coverage now. We want to go to Biloxi, Mississippi. Reporter Chris Chimera is in Biloxi tonight. Chris, right now it doesn't look too bad right there, at least where you're standing.
Well, Mike, looks are deceiving sometimes because the wind is all over the place. It's been whipping for hours now. That has become more consistent at this point because now it's not whipping and then going back down again to an eerie calm. It's more consistent. We're not on a roller coaster. It's beginning to brush us more in the face. It's come from the easterly direction, and we expect once as the eye begins to make its way more toward the north and west portion as it sits 60 miles down in the Gulf of Mexico, we expect those winds will begin to come from the south. Along Highway 90 here, the coastal highway, we have started to see the street look more like a river in some locations. That, as the storm surge begins to push a little bit ashore, also that storm and that river, if you will, that has become Highway 90 or was Highway 90, it's pushing, the wind is pushing that water to the east. So it's moving very rapidly, and the wind again beginning to roar as well here. And then the rain is another issue altogether because it's been raining since early this morning. It started raining at our hotel here 11 o'clock and has not let up at all. It started to flood in the front region. We expect that will continue as it begins to move very far to the north. And most of the people here have already left. We talked to some people early in the day who decided they were going to stay. However, we saw them leaving earlier for good reason because that forecast is going to New Orleans probably scared them when they realized maybe it wasn't going to head that direction and maybe headed more here, especially since it sits 60 miles that direction. Mike, back to you in the Forecast Center in Atlanta.
Okay, reporter Chris Chimera, thanks for the update from Biloxi, Mississippi, and we of course apologize for the audio problems with that report. Now we're back in the Forecast Center with senior meteorologist Stu Ostro, I should say meteorology supervisor Stu Ostro, and let's talk a little bit about the impact that Hurricane George may have on New Orleans still, and then we'll talk about where it's really going to be bad overnight and into the first of the week.
Well, one thing I've learned over the years, in some cases the hard way, is to not say a particular place has the all clear until it is absolutely a certainty. That disclaimer aside, it really looks like, at least for the moment, the worst is missing New Orleans. However, things bad to the east of New Orleans and getting worse.
Let's talk about the satellite photography. This gives you an idea of what's going on. As far as the eye is concerned, we haven't seen much of a motion left or right. It's kind of wobbling to the north towards the Mississippi Gulf Coast at this hour.
Yeah, and we'd also point out that this satellite photo is about 2.5, 3 hours old at this time of night, at this time of year, given that the Earth is between the satellite and the sun, and it's a solar-powered satellite. We have what's called an eclipse. But we think that looking at radar imagery, it's continuing to wobble along to the north-northwest, maybe just slightly west of due north.
Why don't we go to the radar right now and give you a better perspective, since this is hot off the press, just a few minutes old. This is a Doppler out of Mobile, and here's the Florida Panhandle here. Here's Alabama and Mississippi. New Orleans right now, Lake Pontchartrain, boy, hardly a drop of rain over that way.
Yeah, one thing that we'll still have to keep a close eye on for New Orleans is that some of these bands of rain wrap back into the city, but at least for now, Look at that, they're right in a hole in the rain. However, farther to the east, it's the opposite, where these bands of torrential tropical downpours have been coming over some of the same places all evening, and that's caused very large rain amounts and flash flooding.
Let's go to the closer shot of the same Doppler radar, and we can talk a little bit about the eye wall, which is very evident here on the eastern side of the center of the hurricane.
You know, let's do a little geography first. Again, Florida Panhandle. This is Alabama, Mississippi, and we have Mobile in here. We have Gulfport and Biloxi. This, let me just clear the screen, this right here is Dauphin Island, which had problems from coastal flooding even last night at this time before the worst of the hurricane got there. And now it looks like this band, which developed in the eye wall, is just about to swing on shore. There's more where that came from. Last hour, close to 60 miles per hour, sustained gust of close to 80 miles per hour. So it looks like it's going to be a very rough night on Dauphin Island. And we're also watching the center of circulation here get ever closer to the coast.
And fortunately, everybody there in Dauphin Island was evacuated. Likewise, the barrier islands from the western panhandle of Florida westward all the way towards New Orleans, out of harm's way because of the hurricane warning. So this should really cut down on the injuries and fatalities.
We really hope that everybody got off the barrier islands in time, because it doesn't look real good.
Now, what about the prospects of the rainfall continuing? We've noticed the slow movement of the storm. This is the rainfall total since 8 o'clock this morning, and considering that some major hurricanes, even Category 3 hurricanes, only maybe drop 10, 12 inches of rain, we've already seen as much as 10, 11 inches, officially a little over 9 now, Pensacola, in a short period of time.
Yeah, there's not necessarily a relationship between the wind speed and the amount of rain. We've seen weak tropical storms and even tropical depressions dump a lot of rain that's caused catastrophic flooding. Then we've seen intense hurricanes that had a lot of wind and wind damage and storm surge, but move very quickly. However, this one, both due to the amount of moisture that it has with it and its slow movement, has already caused a lot of rain, and it looks like a lot more where that came from.
And as we had expected, the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma has issued a tornado watch. They've extended the previous watch, which was set to expire now until 1 o'clock Monday afternoon, 1 o'clock Central Time. Basically the same areas, Mississippi, southern Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. And we could see tornadoes spun up as the hurricane comes on shore in the northeast quadrant. That is generally the spot where we see these tornadoes.
Yeah, typically ahead and to the right of where the circulation center goes in, and most of the population will not experience a tornado. There will be few and far between, but that'll be of little consolation to anybody that gets hit. And it's also nighttime. They spin it very quickly, so it's really tough to have any advance warning.
And the only good news here is the tornadoes associated with hurricanes tend to be F1s and F2s on the Fujita scale, not the typical F4s or F5s you see in Kansas.
Right, although once in a while folks near New Orleans had a pretty bad one with Andrew when it came in, but generally they're weaker.
Okay, Stu Oster, thanks for the analysis here. As we continue to follow Hurricane George throughout the day on Monday, and it will be around, it looks like, into Tuesday and Wednesday, causing numerous problems. We'll keep you updated with more live coverage and more analysis here in the Forecast Center. Of course, if you're away from your TV set, check us out online at the Weather Channel online service at weather.com. Now let's go back to the studio, get the rest of the current weather and your forecast. Here's Christina.
All right, thanks, Mike. We do have a bit of wet weather as we head into some other parts of the country. With this front moving through the northeast, you've had some wet weather, and the front trailing back into the plain states. And with this low, we've got rain and we've got some storms here through parts of Kansas. And then back into northern California, you've had a little bit of wet weather too. But into the northeast we go, where moving through West Virginia and on into Virginia, still some rain here, and still a few scattered areas of wet weather through New England. Very stormy. It's been sort of a rough night for you in parts of Kansas. Atchison County, you are under a severe thunderstorm warning right now. So where you see the yellows, the reds here, that's where the worst of it is. As we head on north of Kansas City, north of I-70 right now is where we see some of the bigger storms. And finally into California, we see the wet weather moving offshore, but we could see some more wet weather as we head through the rest of tonight and on into tomorrow. So wet weather possible in all of these areas, and some of that could be in the form of strong and even severe storms, including isolated tornadoes. And to the northeast, you'll see those temperatures